By now, you probably already know the name James Robertson. He's the Detroit man who walks 21 miles each day to get to and from his job. But why his story became a sensation probably says more about the media than it does about Robertson himself. For the Detroit Free Press, it seemed like a natural story. James Robertson's daily ordeal getting to his factory job.
By the time Friday comes, you're mentally and physically drained.
A bus only covers part of his commute. He walks most of the rest, 21 miles each day.
Well, no one can say I didn't pay my dues in life.
James Robertson's story clearly struck a nerve, making him an overnight media sensation.
The Detroit man who walks 21 miles to and from work every day.
That only leaves him with 2 hours to sleep before he wakes up to do it all over again.
With that attention came an outpouring of support. An online campaign raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Robertson, and a local dealership gave him a brand new car.
I would like to present you the keys to your new Ford Taurus.
But the story that made people feel good has Robertson himself feeling bad.
With the attention given the situation, I think that we want to make sure that he gets as much attention from us as he did get from the community around him.
He says he's been harassed, and Detroit police have now moved him to temporary living quarters. An unexpected turn from the story we all wanted to hear. Yeah, and a lot of reporters really injected themselves in this. Once the guy had been relocated, somebody knocked on his door and, they trying to barrel, we understand how you feel and we're not here to exploit you, yet sort of perpetuating the whole thing. I mean, it sort of played into this stereotype too of, the downtrodden, even the African-American angle of it, and this feel-good story that everybody rallies around him. It reminded me a little bit of that guy, Ted Williams. Remember the singing?
The voiceover guy.
The voice, the voice guy, and then he ended up going on all the morning talk shows and then falling off the wagon, and I don't even know what happened to him. But this guy claims that his neighbors are asking for money and people trying to shake him down, and he didn't want the car in the first place, and
It's the same story we've seen many times before. It's this sort of nugget of something that seems so universal that every news station, every newspaper can do something on, because it seems like a story that's so ridiculous and yet seems to have an easy answer. Somebody says, well, he can have a car. We'll have some place for him to live. I think the bigger issue here is, and this is beyond the media, is that it's larger issues at play, and the problems of Detroit with the infrastructure there, with the problems in transportation. It's not going to be fixed by just helping one man. As to whether journalists themselves are responsible for any of this, that's where I have some problem, because yes, there's a lot of attention to this, but unless some of that attention is going towards the other problems in Detroit, these things are beyond our control.
I mean, even some of that original Detroit Free Press story was very strange to me. I don't know if you read it. I mean, it was meant to call attention to public transportation woes, and it did, and that was good. But there were really, it had this weird fixation on his walk and how much he seemed to love his walk, and then there was this callous boss who said, oh, he's like an exemplar of an employee and my wife is going to give him lunch. I mean, if you really value the guy and like him, give him a raise so he can buy a used car. Like, nothing about the story.
Clear he wanted a car.
Yeah, there was something just that didn't add up about the entire story.
It sounded so much like the perfect nut graph that your editors want. It's like, oh, this is the perfect guy for this story.
Even the walking didn't add up to me.
Well, empathy can't be faked. I guess you can try. But real empathy means sensitivity toward the person whose story evokes your empathy. If your empathy just extends to exploiting the story for a good headline or a good talker that goes viral, and then you really aren't careful or sensitive to perhaps issues the guy has, or the need to protect the privacy of exactly where he lives, then you're just, you're just a prostitute.
When covering difficult social issues like this, the media tend to make two different mistakes. Either they look at the whole issue from 5,000 feet and just bore everybody and ignore the human element, or they do nothing but the human element and don't place it in a broader context. And this is an example of the latter. And so it creates this impression that if we just get this poor guy a car, all will be right with the world again. And so in that respect, I do kind of blame the media, because that's just no way to tell a complex story.
And by the way, to its credit, NPR actually really did bear down on this story and looked at some of the more complex issues and raised some flags. And it's not the kind of thing it would normally dig into, but they did.